I'm going to teach you absolutely everything you could possibly need to know to hit the ground running as a Frost Death Knight in Cataclysm Classic for raiding, dungeons, and all endgame content. Starting off then with what races should we be picking if we're looking to min-max? If we're on the Alliance side, I would say to go with humans, and that's for a few specific reasons. One of them is actually diplomacy, increasing our reputation gains by 10%. Some of the enchants I'm going to be showing you in this video will require Cataclysm reputations, and therefore getting these even quicker will give you an edge over the competition. As Frost, we will be either dual or two-hand wielding our weapons, and the sword and mace specializations given to humans will be beneficial for us, especially with the items that are actually going to be in the drop tables in Cataclysm. There is also the will to survive, removing all movement impairing effects every 2 minutes, which technically acts like a PvP trinket. For the Horde, there's two I would recommend. If you want to go for the absolute maximum damage output, it's going to have to be Orc. They have the Blood Fury cooldown, increasing attack power by 1170, and that'll last 15 seconds every 2 minutes. There is also Command. Damage dealt by our Death Knight pets is going to be increased by 5% as well as the Axe specialization. However, with the drop tables, etc., we're not going to be making massive use of this in Cataclysm, but it is still there and something to be aware of just in case we are using axes. If you don't want to go Orc, however, you can also go Troll for one reason and one reason only, being Berserking. It's a cooldown that's basically a mini Bloodlust, increasing your attack speed by 20% for 10 seconds every 3 minutes. There is also Beast Slaying, where you're going to do increased damage to beasts. There's not really many beast bosses in Cataclysm, however, and this would be more useful while leveling. Looking at the stat priority, Strength will be our number one stat we want to get, and that will be given to us on all of our gear with higher and higher eye level. This, of course, giving us our attack power. Next up, we want to get to our expertise and hit rating caps. For hit rating, this is going to be 8%, and for expertise, we want to get this up to 26. After that, we're going to go for mastery or haste, depending if you're dual wielding or two-hand wielding. Don't forget that you can reforge your stats in Cataclysm, meaning that if you actually happen to swap from two-handing to dual wielding, you can reforge these stats as appropriate. If you are dual wielding, we are going to be looking for haste, and if you are two-handing, it is going to be mastery that you want. After those, critical strike will be the last and lowest priority stat on your gear. Looking at the talents, of course, most of these are going into the Frost tree, as we are a Frost Death Knight. Starting off at the top, we're putting 2 out of 3 into Runic Power Mastery, increasing how much Runic Power we have. If you don't know, Runic Power up here is our main resource as a Death Knight, and then we also have our runes. We have 2 Death, 2 Frost, and 2 Unholy runes as well, and that is our main resources. Runic Power Mastery increasing our Runic Power. We've got Nerves of Cold Steel, increasing our chance to hit with one-handed melee weapons by 3% and the damage done by our offhand weapon by 25%. That's obviously really useful for our hit rating and damage. We have Endless Winter here, making our Mind Freeze cost no runic power. That is this spell over here. It's a 10-second cooldown, and this is our main kick or interrupt. This is our main spell we're going to be using to interrupt our enemy's spellcasting. And with that talent, it's then going to be free, meaning if we need to interrupt something and we've got no runic power, that's fine. We're also putting 3 out of 3 into Annihilation, increasing the damage dealt by our Obliterate. That is this ability here. More on that in the rotation part of the video. 2 out of 2 into Merciless Combat. Your Icy Touch, Howling Blast, Obliterate, and Frost Strike do an additional amount of damage when enemies have low health. Chill of the Grave, making some of our abilities generate more runic power. And Killing Machine. This is a really fundamental one. Your auto attacks have a chance to grant 100% critical strike bonus to our next Obliterate or Frost Strike, and that can occur more often than Killing Machine rank 2. So basically, the more points you put into it, the higher the chance that's going to happen is, giving us a massive chance to get that proc on Killing Machine and do critical strikes guaranteed. We're basically putting all points into the next row. 2 out of 2 into Brittle Bones. Your strength is increased and your Frost Fever chills the bones of its victims, increasing their physical damage taken. That is one of the diseases we're going to be putting on our enemies. There's 2 diseases we're putting on there, Blood Plague and Frost Fever. More on that again in the rotation. Improved Icy Talons, increasing the melee and range attack speed of all party and raid members within 100 yards by 10%, and your own attack speed by an additional 5%. If we look up top here, this is an actual passive effect we're getting. You can see it in my buffs. Improved Icy Talons, you can see there that we have that on at all times. We've got Pillar of Frost. This is a big cooldown that we're going to be using. And Rhyme, your Obliterate, again, this ability here, has a 45% chance to cause your next Howling Blast or Icy Touch to consume no runes. Howling Blast is here. It usually costs 1 Frost rune. When we're then using our Obliterate, we have a chance to make it be free of any runes at all. Hunger and Cold, another cooldown, purging the earth around us of all heat. Enemies within 10 yards are afflicted with our Frost Fever and trapped in ice, preventing them performing any action. Then we have Improved Frost Presence, increasing the bonus damage while in Frost Presence. And in addition, while in Blood or Unholy, we're going to retain 4% of our increased runic power regeneration. Now, even though we are a Frost Death Knight, I do advise, and it is a higher DPS output to actually go into Unholy Presence, with your attack speed and rune regen increased by 10%, movement speed increased, and your global cooldown on your skills also reduced. If you don't know what a global cooldown is, when I use an attack, can you see it sort of goes around like a clock? Like that? That's the global cooldown. It's the time after you use an ability until you can actually use another ability. And if you're wondering why my ability just suddenly lit up, that is from the Killing Machine proc, where we've got the 100% crit chance bonus there. So when I use one of these spells, it will be guaranteed crit. So you always know when you get that proc because it will actually light up your abilities. Then we've got the Threat of Thracian. When dual wielding, your Death Strike, Obliterate, Plague Strikes, Rune Strikes, etc., have a 100% chance to also deal damage with your offhand weapon. And lastly, our Howling Blast ability, which I'm going to go through shortly. A few other talents we're putting in here. 2 out of 2 into Epidemic, increases the duration of our Blood Plague and Frost Fever. That is the 2 diseases I spoke about. 3 out of 3 into Virulence, increasing the damage done by our diseases by 30%. And then a few into the Blood Tree here. Bladed Armor, increasing your attack power by an amount of your armor value. A nice passive there. And Butchery. Whenever you kill an enemy that grants experience or honor, you get more runic power back. In addition, you generate 2 runic power per 5 seconds while you are in combat. Looking at what glyphs we're going to be taking, we're going to put Glyph of Frost Strike, reducing the cost of our Frost Strike by 8 runic power, simply making that ability cost less. Glyph of Howling Blast, which is now going to infect our targets with our Frost Fever. That again is one of our diseases. And Glyph of Obliterate, increasing the damage of it by 20%. For our major glyphs, we have Dark Succor. Your next Death Strike performed while in Frost or Unholy, within 15 seconds after killing an enemy, will restore at least 20% of your maximum health. Glyph of Anti-Magic Shell, increasing the duration of our Anti-Magic Shell by 2 seconds. And Hunger and Cold, this one is no longer going to cost any runic power. That is another cooldown we've got. For Minor, our Blood Tap no longer causes damage to you. This is Blood Tap over here. It's a cooldown, immediately activating a Blood Rune and converting it into a Death Rune for the next 20 seconds. Death Runes count as a Blood, Frost or Unholy Rune. Basically then, it's adding or easing the situationality of what runes we can use. We only have a set amount of each rune. Here we've got 2 Unholy, 2 Frost, etc. and some Death Runes. If you run out of Frost runes, you can't use your Frost abilities that need runes. Where Blood Tap is actually going to mean that we can use whatever abilities we want with the runes that we have available. Glyph of Path of Frost. Your Path of Frost ability now allows you to fall from a greater distance without suffering damage. And Glyph of Horn of Winter, increasing the duration of it by a minute. If you don't know what any of those abilities are, don't worry, because we're going to go through what they are and how they all come together in the rotation now. Now, when we go into battle, the first thing we want to do is put on our diseases and keep these diseases up at all times. There's a few ways you can do it. Howling Blast, which does cost 1 Frost Rune, is going to inflict them with Frost Fever. You can also use Icy Touch, chills the target for frost damage and infects them with Frost Fever, a disease that deals periodic damage and reduces melee and range attack speed by 20% for 29 seconds. And Plague Strike, a vicious strike that deals 100% weapon damage plus 421 and infects them with Blood Plague, a disease dealing shadow damage over time. And we want to keep both of those diseases up on the target at all times. That's our top priority. The next thing on our rotation is going to be using Obliterate. So just to mention, by the way, this big row here is our single target priority, and that's what we're going to be looking through to start with. If we have a Killing Machine proc, which we just we now do, which is basically our obliterate is lit up like this from the killing machine, remember, and that is meaning that we're going to get 100% bonus to critical strike chance on your next obliterate. If we have that proc, then we're going to use our obliterate, or if we have one frost and unholy rune available, which we do, and that is what obliterate is going to cost. So we're then going to use our obliterate as our next priority if we have a killing machine proc and have those runes available, or have those runes available. You can see here now we have maximum runic power, and our main runic power spender is going to be our Frost Strike. If we are nearing maximum runic power, use your Frost Strike to spend it, and that is basically your runic power dump. It also benefits from the killing machine 100% crit damage bonus, or chance bonus, should I say. Don't forget, when we use our obliterate, it has a 45% chance to cause our next Howling Blast to consume no runes. At this point in the priority list, if we get that rhyme proc on our Howling Blast, like you can see we have here, then use it. That is going to be a free Howling Blast. After that, we're just going to use obliterate, no matter if we've got a proc or not. And if we don't have any runes available to use anything, then again, we can use our Frost Strike, even if we're not nearly maxed on runic power. Basically, if you can't use any of these abilities because you've used all your runes, like for example now, then we can use our Frost Strike as a kind of filler spell. If not, if there's no proc on our Howling Blast, then we use it at this point in the rotation. Don't forget, it is also going to infect all targets with Frost Fever. That's the Frost Disease. Apart from that, we can use our Horn of Winter on cooldown. The Death Knight blows the Horn of Winter, regenerating some runic power and increasing strength and agility of all party and raid members, lasting 3 minutes. Keep this up at all times. We then have our interrupts here, our Mind Freeze on a 10-second cooldown, interrupting the target, and also Strangulate, another interrupt but on a 1-minute cooldown. Strangulate the enemy, silencing them for 5 seconds, and interrupting spellcasting. If we're then looking at our AoE rotation, it's quite similar. We can use our Howling Blast. Remember that it's going to blast a target with Frigid Wind, dealing frost damage to that foe and to all other enemies within 10 yards, infecting all of them with Frost Fever. That's a really great way of getting Frost Fever up. We then want to put our Plague Strike up, getting that Blood Plague on them, and we can put down Death and Decay. Corrupts the ground targeted by the Death Knight, causing shadow damage every second to all targets remaining in the area. It does produce a high amount of threat, so be aware of this. Otherwise, use your Frost Strike, and if we want to spread all our diseases to other targets, we can use Pestilence. Spreads the existing Blood Plague and Frost Fever infections from your target to all other enemies nearby. It is only going to do half the amount of damage, however, from those diseases when spread in this way. Looking at our cooldowns, we have 4 offensive and 3 more defensive or utility cooldowns. Army of the Dead, summoning an entire legion of ghouls to fight for the Death Knight. The ghouls will swarm the area, taunting and fighting anything they can. While channeling Army of the Dead, the Death Knight takes less damage equal to his dodge plus parry chance. And as you can see, we have loads of ghouls here attacking and taunting the target, doing damage. We also have Pillar of Frost, calls upon the power of frost to increase the Death Knight's strength by 20%. Icy crystals hang heavy upon the Death Knight's body, providing immunity against external movement, such as knockbacks. Ideally, using this on cooldown, and because it's increasing your strength, any on-use trinkets you should be using with this cooldown. We then have your Empower Rune weapon, empowering your weapon, immediately activating all of your runes and generating some runic power. It does have a 5-minute cooldown, so you may only be able to use it once or twice per fight, depending on the length. And you should be using this when all of your runes are on cooldown and that you're not going to overcap on the runic power it provides. We also have Raise Dead, raising a ghoul to fight for you. You can have a maximum of 1 at a time. It lasts a minute and is on a 3-minute cooldown. It will benefit from the stats that you have at the moment you cast it. And what I mean by that is if you have things like Pillar of Frost active, increasing your strength, your Raise Dead ghoul will actually benefit from this. And it will also actually benefit from things like Bloodlust and things like that, because again, it's actually going to benefit from the stats you have. And if you have increased haste from Bloodlust or Heroism at the time, it will benefit from these as well. So try and time this with other cooldowns that are actually enhancing your stats. Now looking at our defensive ones, we've got Icebound Fortitude on a 3-minute cooldown. You become immune to stun effects and reduce all damage taken. Very simple there. Death Pact sacrifices an undead minion, healing you for 25% of his maximum health. The heal cannot be critical. And Blood Tap, which we mentioned earlier. The only other one that I didn't put on the bar, oops, is Anti-Magic Shell on a 45-second cooldown, surrounding the Death Knight in the Anti-Magic Shell, absorbing 75% of damage dealt by harmful spells, up to 50% of your max health, and preventing the application of harmful magical effects. I'll put that one on there now. We do also have Outbreak, instantly applying Blood Plague and Frost Fever to the target enemy. You can use this when you go into battle to immediately get those on, if you haven't used them separately here, for example, to save runes. And one other thing we have is Chains of Ice. This is more of a utility spell. Shackles the target with frozen chains, reducing their movement speed and infecting them with Frost Fever. This is just a great way of slowing down your target. And that is pretty much it for the rotations, etc. on Frost Death Knight. So get your plagues up, whether it's by Howling Blast and Plague Strike, whether it's via Outbreak, Pestilence and AoE, etc. Using Obliterate when you have full runes available and it's procced. Using Frost Strike when you've got nearly maximum runic power as a runic power dump. Using Howling Blast when you get a Rhyme proc, like here, from using your Obliterate. If there's no procs and you have only got one set of each rune available, use Obliterate. Use Frost Strike if there's nothing else you can use because you've used all your runes, and then use Howling Blast. Keep up your Horn of Winter buff, and you've got your interrupts here. Similar for AoE, Howling Blast and Plague Strike, getting those diseases out. Keep your Death and Decay up to do damage in an AoE area. Use Frost Strike again as a runic power dump, and spread diseases with Pestilence. Don't forget, of course, using your cooldowns as appropriate, and stay in Unholy Presence. For the professions and consumables, etc., these are the ones I would personally recommend. First things first, like I said, if you are Alliance, you should go Human, because you get an increased 10% on reputation gains. And these two above my head here, the Arcanum of the Wild Hammer, which will also be Dragonmaw, this is the Twilight Highlands reputation. This is how you're going to get your 60 strength and mastery head slot enchant. And you do need to be revered with those factions. So Wild Hammer on Alliance, Dragonmaw if you're Horde. Pharazane and Deepholm for, there's a revered version and also exalted one, as you can see here, 50 strength, etc. on the shoulder enchant. So again, reputation is really important. If you're not sure how to get these reps, I have got a reputation guide on my channel, by the way. I'll put it down in the description for you. On the other gems you should go for, Bold Inferno Ruby for red slots, giving strength. Fierce Ember Topaz on yellow, giving strength and haste. And Etched Demon's Eye, giving strength and hit on the blue sockets. For the professions, interestingly enough, tailoring actually works out best for us Death Knights because of the cloak enchant we can get from it, giving your melee attacks a chance to increase your attack power by 1,000 for 15 seconds. If you want to go blacksmithing because you want to create some gear, that gives you 2 sockets that you can put onto gear, so you can then put extra gems in. You could go that way. However, tailoring does work out better with this cloak enchant. I also then recommend enchanting. You can put 2 ring enchants on, so 1 on each ring for strength, increasing your strength by 40 on each ring, meaning 80 extra strength there. Of course, as Death Knights, we do actually get our own weapon enchants. If you're dual wielding, use Rune of Razor Ice on your main hand and Rune of the Fallen Crusader on your offhand. If you are two-hand wielding, just put Rune of the Fallen Crusader on the two-handed weapon. You can see the effects of these on the right-hand side here. For the actual consumables we're going to be using, the Flask of Titanic Strength is the one you want to use for your Strength Flask, and the Golem Blood Potion, increasing strength by 1200 for 25 seconds, is your in-combat potion. If you need a healing potion, the Mythical Healing Potion is the one to go for, and the Beer Bast Crocolisk is the food you're going to want to be using if you're not using a feast. That's going to give you 90 strength and 90 stamina for an hour. And that is everything you should need to know to play Frost Death Knight in Cataclysm Classic. Hope this was really helpful for you. If you like, feel free to join the Discord if you have any questions at all and I can help you out, or another member of our wonderful community can help you. And if you would like to support the channel, especially as now so many people are using ad blockers and things, and I only do this in my spare time after my 9 to 5 in the evenings, it really would be a massive support if you would like to consider joining my Patreon, which is in the description as well. I put out behind the scenes videos and Patreon only content and written guides like how to log and simulate your character, etc. as well. And of course, it just really helps support me get these videos out. If you are, if you would like to, of course, just saying, it is there. If you would like to, no pressure, of course. I don't want to sound like I'm, shilling it. If you would also need any other guides, whether that is for Death Knight or other classes, I've done them all for Cataclysm Classic for you, and the playlist is here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and good luck in Cataclysm.